I first met Isabella Rose at a charity gala held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Crystal chandeliers flooded the venue with cold white light, casting her moon-white evening gown as if submerged in an icy spring. The elusive sense of detachment in her brows and eyes made me momentarily mistake her for Eleanor Young, especially when she bowed her head to adjust her silk gloves, the curve of her lowered eyelashes almost identical to the memory of Eleanor leaning over her architectural sketches. Eleanor was the love of my life, the person I had cherished deeply for 10 years. Passionate and pure, she was obsessed with architectural design. Yet 3 years ago, she resolutely left for Los Angeles to pursue her dreams, leaving nothing but a promise: wait for me to make a name for myself. Over those 3 years, I guarded my empty penthouse in Manhattan, running my fingers over her leftover design drafts repeatedly, every corner lingering with her scent. So when Isabella appeared before me, bearing a 70% resemblance to Eleanor in appearance and 30% in temperament, I instinctively approached her. She was being pestered by a slick hedge fund manager, her eyes concealing suppressed disgust. Seeing me approach, she leaned gently against me as if grasping at a lifeline. "Mr. Wright." Her voice was soft, tinged with a hint of timidity. Unlike Eleanor's clear and cheerful tone, it somehow struck a chord in my heart. I rescued her from the awkward situation and casually handed her my business card. "Would you be interested in working at Wright Group?" I knew my motives were impure. I wanted to keep Isabella by my side as a shadow of Eleanor. She could fill the emptiness in my life and ease my longing for Eleanor, nothing more. Isabella soon became my executive assistant and naturally moved into my townhouse on the Upper East Side. The house was filled with traces of Eleanor. Architectural sketches drawn by her hung in the study, a few unused Ralph Lauren shirts remained in the closet, and even the flower arrangement in the living room was her favorite white hydrangeas. Isabella was thoughtful, never touching anything that belonged to Eleanor. She quietly took care of everything in the house, brewing me a perfectly temperatured black coffee every morning, and leaving the porch light on no matter how late I returned from Wall Street. She was an excellent cook. Her lasagna even had a hint of the homemade flavor of an Italian grandmother. Eleanor's mother was from Sicily, after all. Yet I never appreciated her efforts. "The coffee's too hot." Eleanor would never make such a mistake. I pushed the Ember-Smart mug aside, watching her scurry to cool it down without a flicker of sympathy. "These hydrangeas are wilting. Replace them. Eleanor likes fresh ones." I glanced at the flower arrangement, ignoring the fact that she had rushed to Chelsea Market at 4 in the morning to pick them out. "This dress doesn't suit you." Eleanor wore it with much more grace. On her birthday, she put on a new Diane von Furstenberg dress, her eyes filled with anticipation, but I poured cold water on her without mercy. At a summer party in the Hamptons, she wore the coral pink gown I'd chosen, Eleanor's favorite color. When someone teased that we made a perfect couple, I scowled instantly. "Don't be ridiculous. She's just my assistant, not even worthy of carrying Eleanor's bag." I clearly saw her fingers clench tightly, her nails almost digging into her palms, yet she forced a polite smile on her face. Back at the townhouse, she silently changed out of the gown, her shoulders trembling slightly. I sat on the leather sofa sipping Macallan whiskey and said coldly, "Remember your place." She suffered from stomach problems, but often endured hunger pangs waiting for me to have dinner together. Once she curled up on the sofa, her face pale with pain. My first reaction when I got home was, "Can't you handle such a trivial matter?" Eleanor pulled 3 all-nighters straight to meet a design deadline and was fine. Instead of calling a doctor, I tossed her a bottle of Pepto-Bismol and walked into the study. I watched the light in her eyes fade little by little, like a candle snuffed out by the wind. Yet she never complained, only silently gathering her emotions and doing as I asked. Sometimes I even found her too compliant, so compliant that she bored me. But then I reminded myself, wasn't the reason I kept her around to have her play the role of Eleanor's shadow? She was supposed to obey, to imitate Eleanor. After getting drunk at a bar in Greenwich Village one night, I hugged her and called out Eleanor's name. "Eleanor, why did you take so long to come back? I missed you so much." I felt her body stiffen, then she gently pushed me away, her voice trembling. "Jackson, it's me, Isabella." I sobered up a little at that moment. Looking at her red-rimmed eyes, I felt no guilt, only anger. "Isabella, do you think you're qualified to stand here if you didn't look like Eleanor? Know your place." She froze and tears finally fell, each drop hitting the hardwood floor like shattered crystal. She didn't say another word, just turned and ran into the guest room. I heard a muffled sob as the door closed. I didn't go to comfort her. In my eyes, she was just a substitute, a tool to ease my longing. In the days that followed, Isabella grew even quieter. She still kept everything in perfect order, but no longer took the initiative to talk to me, a thick barrier forming in her eyes. Sometimes when I worked late into the night, she would leave dinner warming in the Viking professional oven, and then go back to her room silently, no longer waiting for me in the living room, as she used to. I felt an inexplicable irritability. I had grown used to her obedience and companionship, used to her eyes following me everywhere. Her distance made me uncomfortable. But I refused to admit that I had developed feelings for her beyond seeing her as a substitute. I told myself that after not seeing Eleanor for so long, I was projecting my dependence on Eleanor onto her. I began to torment her even more cruelly. I deliberately mentioned Eleanor in front of her, showed her photos Eleanor sent from Beverly Hills, and even made her imitate Eleanor's way of dressing and speaking. I thought she would endure it forever, just like before, but I never expected her to have firmer boundaries than I imagined. It was Eleanor's birthday that day. I asked Isabella to make lobster pasta, Eleanor's favorite, and to put on the champagne-colored Oscar de la Renta gown Eleanor had left behind. Isabella stood there holding the gown for a long time, then finally looked up at me calmly. "Jackson, I can't wear this." "Why not?" I frowned, giving her an order. "Wear it because I told you to. This is Eleanor's dress. I'm not her, and I don't want to be her." Her voice was soft but unusually firm. "Jackson, it's time for us to end this." "End it?" I was stunned. I never thought this woman, who had endured everything, would take the initiative to call it quits. A surge of irrational anger welled up in me. I felt betrayed by the agreement that she would play the role of Eleanor for me. "End it?" I sneered, stepping closer to her. "Isabella, who do you think you are? If it weren't for me, that fund manager would have taken advantage of you long ago. Everything you have now is a gift from me. Want to leave? Fine, pay me back for everything." I knew my words were cruel, but I couldn't control myself. Looking at her pale face and trembling lips, I continued, "Including your mother's medical bills at Mayo Clinic." She straightened her back. "I'll pay you back every penny. But I never begged you to save me, and I never wanted to replace anyone." With that, she turned and went back to her room, soon emerging with a small suitcase. It only contained her own belongings, nothing I had bought for her. She placed the townhouse keys on the baccarat crystal tray in the hallway, glanced at me once, her eyes showing no nostalgia, only relief. "Goodbye, Jackson." She left without hesitation, never looking back. I stood there, staring at the empty hallway, feeling as if my heart had been torn out. The townhouse suddenly fell eerily quiet, no more aroma of her brewed coffee, no more sight of her tidying up, no more light waiting for me. All that remained were traces of Eleanor, yet they felt strange and unfamiliar. I thought I would forget Isabella soon enough, after all, she was just a substitute. But the opposite happened, her shadow lingered in my mind, refusing to fade. I thought of the Thanksgiving turkey she made, the beer and pretzels she prepared when I watched Knicks games, the way she endured stomach pain silently, and all the cruel words I had said to her. I began to miss her frantically. I went to the Brooklyn cafe she used to frequent, sat in her usual seat, and ordered her favorite oat milk latte, but it never tasted quite right. Back at the townhouse, I looked into the room she had stayed in. The faint scent of her Jo Malone perfume still lingered, and the memories pierced my heart like a knife. I found the Moleskine notebook she had left in the study, filled with detailed notes about my likes, dislikes, and even the vintage baseball cards I had casually mentioned wanting. Every page was densely written, yet I had never paid it any attention. That's when I realized, Isabella had long since taken residence in my heart. I had grown accustomed to her presence, relied on her companionship, yet I had refused to admit it, treating her as nothing more than Eleanor's shadow and hurting her relentlessly. Regret overwhelmed me. I regretted my coldness and cruelty, regretted not treating her well, regretted driving her away. I searched for her frantically, using all my connections and resources, but she had vanished without a trace. I sent people to her hometown in Kansas and her alma mater, Northwestern University, only to learn that she had long since moved away. During those days, I drank myself into a stupor every night, my company affairs fell into chaos, and the townhouse became a mess. Only then did I realize how much she had done for me. Just as I was on the verge of despair, Eleanor returned. She appeared before me wearing a gorgeous Carolina Herrera gown, arm in arm with a stranger. She was more mature and beautiful than 3 years ago, her brows now filled with sophistication and shrewdness, having lost the purity and passion of her youth. "Jackson, I'm back." She greeted me with a smile, her tone familiar yet distant. Looking at her, I felt absolutely nothing. The woman I had pined for day and night was finally standing in front of me, but I realized I no longer loved her. What I had loved was the pure, passionate Eleanor in my memories, not the stranger before me. What surprised me even more was that Eleanor hadn't returned for me. She told me she was engaged to the man beside her, and had come back to expand her business in New York. "Jackson, I told you when I left, I'm chasing a career, not love." She smiled calmly, swirling her champagne glass. "I know you've always liked me, but we're not right for each other." I stood frozen in place as if struck by lightning. I had waited for her for 3 years, used Isabella as her substitute, and hurt Isabella deeply, only to discover that everything I had clung to was nothing but an illusion. Eleanor's engagement party was held grandly at the Plaza Hotel, attended by numerous celebrities. I didn't go. Instead, I sat alone in the empty townhouse, drinking myself into a stupor. Alcohol numbed my nerves, but it couldn't ease the pain and regret in my heart. I thought of the hangover soup Isabella had made for me, the careful care she had given me when I was drunk, and all the cruel words I had spoken to her. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. I finally understood. What I had lost was not just a substitute, but Isabella, the woman who had loved me sincerely and given me her all. I had pushed her away with my own hands, and now I could never get her back. Just as I was drowning in remorse, I received a photograph. In the picture, Isabella stood in a sunflower field in Kansas, smiling brightly and radiantly. Beside her stood a gentle-looking man, gazing at her with affection. On the back of the photo were the words, "I've found my sunshine, Jackson." Tears poured down my face the moment I saw it. I knew, I had truly lost her forever. Later, I learned from a friend that Isabella's approach to me hadn't been accidental. She had also had a great love in her heart, her college senior, Gabriel, a kind and gentle man who had died in a car accident. And I bore a 50% resemblance to Gabriel in profile. So we had both been substitutes for each other. The reason she had endured my coldness and cruelty was simply because she had seen a shadow of Gabriel in me, seeking a modicum of comfort. Yet I had treated her cruelly, repeatedly opening her old wounds. Once, she had a high fever of 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit 39 degrees Celsius, and was bedridden, but I had accused her of not reminding me to send warm clothes to Eleanor after receiving a message from her saying, "It's cooling down in Malibu," forcing her to drag herself to FedEx while sick. Now I couldn't help but wonder, how heartbroken she must have been. But Gabriel hadn't actually died. Back then, he had been forced to go abroad due to family troubles and lost contact. Later, they had reunited and rekindled their love. He treated her extremely well, remembering all her likes and dislikes, taking gentle care of her when her stomach acted up, and comforting her patiently when she was sad, giving her all the tenderness I had never offered. The moment I learned the truth, I was overwhelmed with agony. I had thought myself the master of this relationship, hurting others without mercy, only to discover that I too had been toyed with by fate. I had hurt someone who, like me, had clung to the past and sought solace in a substitute, and in doing so, had destroyed my own happiness. Thinking of all the hurt I had inflicted on her, all the pain she had endured in silence, and the look of relief in her eyes when she left, my heart felt as if it had been torn apart, leaving me in constant torment day and night. Eleanor's career thrived, and she lived a glamorous life with her fiancé. Meanwhile, I remained trapped in endless remorse and longing, unable to break free. I sold the townhouse filled with memories and left New York, but I couldn't escape Isabella's shadow. I went through countless assistants, but none of them remembered my preferences like she had. I tasted lasagna at restaurants everywhere, but none of them had that familiar flavor. Various women came and went in my life, but none of them loved me as sincerely as she had. I often woke up in the middle of the night, my dreams filled with Isabella, sometimes crying silently after I had hurt her, sometimes smiling brightly in the sunflower field. Every time I woke up, my pillow was soaked with tears, and the pain in my chest made it hard to breathe. I began to suffer from insomnia and loss of appetite, losing weight rapidly, my mental state deteriorating, and my company's performance plummeting. I visited the sunflower field in Kansas from her photograph, standing where she had stood, imagining her smile, but feeling only endless sorrow. As the wind blew, the sunflower head swayed gently, as if mocking my foolishness and stubbornness. Surrounded by tourists taking photos and laughing, speaking in authentic American English and discussing weekend barbecues, I felt like an outsider. I squatted in the field and cried like a child, calling out Isabella's name over and over again, but never receiving a response. I often found myself thinking, if I hadn't treated Isabella as a substitute, if I had cherished her, if I had realized my feelings sooner, would the ending have been different? But there are no what-ifs in life. Once you miss someone, it's forever. Now I live the same monotonous life every day, work, eat, sleep, numb and empty. I have never met anyone who loved me as sincerely as Isabella did, nor have I ever experienced that feeling of being silently accompanied and truly cherished. I throw myself into work, trying to numb the pain with busyness, but every night, when I'm alone, Isabella's shadow appears clearly before me, reminding me of my mistakes. The rain in Seattle never seems to stop, just like my endless remorse, drizzling on without end. I finally understand, some people, once missed, are gone forever. And I will spend the rest of my life repenting for the wrongs I committed against Isabella, bearing the consequences of this chase for redemption. Only this time, the one burning in the fire is not her, but myself. Amidst the embers, all that remains is endless regret and loneliness, to accompany me until the end of my days. I often take out that photograph, looking at Isabella's bright smile, my heart filled with envy and guilt. I know she is happy now, perhaps celebrating Thanksgiving with her loved ones, or vacationing on the beaches of Miami. That happiness could have included me, but I destroyed it with my own hands. For the rest of my life, I will only be able to live with endless longing and remorse. This is the punishment I deserve.